Hello and welcome back to the Most Days podcast. My name is Courtney. I'm your host. Today we're going to talk about the downsides of growing a business and the times when it just kind of sucks and is hard. Um, I had a hard day yesterday. I kind of live in la la land, in a delusion, quite often that everything's going to be okay. Everything has to work out. If it's not okay, it's not the end, is what I say to myself. And I don't think that's delusional necessarily, but I do think it's most days I keep my head up higher than I think most people would, given certain circumstances. And so our businesses are going through a really interesting time right now. We're growing and investing in new parts of the business that we've never done before. There's a lot of money involved. It feels like we're just constantly spending money and waiting for the return and waiting for the return. And there's a lot of anxiety. I wouldn't call it anxiety because if you've heard me talk about money, I tend to not let money anxiety get to me, but there's just anxiety about wanting to succeed, right? Like you don't know if all of the things that you're doing along the way are the right thing until the end. And the story of people growing businesses always sounds great at the end, these comeback stories. And it seems like they knew all the steps were going to work, but they didn't. And so some days just let it get to me. Yesterday was one of those days. And I got to thinking that no business story, no story you've ever heard about success has ever gone like this. Everything went perfect. Everything turned out in their favor. Nobody was stressed. Everyone had the right answers all the time. Things just lined up and things just worked out and doors were opened and it was easy. And they grew this big business and they changed the world and they changed the way we think about something. And it just was easy. Have you ever heard that business story? You haven't even heard stories about it being neutral. Like it's always hard. All the good stories, right? All the stories of success include a lot of failure along the way. And so I think as a business owner, sometimes, just whether you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, working on something on the side, or even just in your day job, if you're really, into it, you can have these moments where you feel like the discomfort is unnatural and undesirable. Like, I don't want to feel discomfort. This doesn't feel good. I don't like feeling uncomfortable. But that's what you're supposed to be feeling. It's literally the only option. Not saying that you have to live in discomfort all the time, like by any means, not saying that. But I go back to, I love the Buddhist principles about suffering, where suffering is just a part of life. And if we attach too much to that suffering, we let it bring us more harm. We can choose to detach from the suffering. But also, suffering is what makes us great. And suffering is what builds us. And suffering is what helps us realize what it is that we actually want to do and how we do want to change the world. And it kind of was a bit of a paradigm shift. Like, yeah, obviously my natural human instinct is to seek comfort. I want to be comfortable. I want to not feel this discomfort any longer. But that's not how it works. That's not where I'm supposed to be right now. And again, not saying you should live in discomfort and stress and anxiety all the time. But if it's not making you a little uneasy, it's probably not going to change the world or change your life. Weight loss is uncomfortable. Marriage counseling is uncomfortable. There's a lot of things in life that discomfort is part of the process. Discomfort is part of the magic potion that creates the outcome that we're looking for. So I had to kind of give myself a paradigm shift. And when I write, I always tend to write what I need to read. And so I thought, well, I'll podcast what I need to hear. Because what I needed to hear yesterday was, this is just part of the journey. This is just part of the process. And it's funny with entrepreneurship. I don't know if you're listening, you're a business owner or what you do, but it doesn't even have to be like a thing that sets off those moments of discomfort, those moments of questioning yourself. Yesterday wasn't like, nothing happened yesterday. I think what started it is the guys at the machine shop asked me to buy a new machine, and another one went from, I feel like every time I walk in there, they need another one. And so I start looking, through finances and cash flow and like really getting into things again, because I haven't really dug into the cash flow of that business in a couple weeks. And it just sets off these like little alarms of like, oh, this is not exactly where we want it to be. Of course, it's not exactly where you want it to be. You are growing something not new to us, but very different and very much bigger than we've ever been before. Of course, it's uncomfortable. Of course, there's not enough money. If there was enough money, you'd be doing something wrong at this point. And I know that as a business owner, I know that. So if you go through those moments of self-doubt, I just want you to know you're not the only one. I would like to be told I'm not the only one in those moments. So if this finds you at the right time, you're not the only one. So a couple weeks ago, I was going to do a series on social media, and I haven't done it yet, but I thought, this would be much better for this specific podcast. So I did some research and wrote some scripts basically about failures, business failures. And I'll give you the plot twist. They're not failures. They're actually successes, but these people went through a lot of failures. And so I have 3 stories I want to tell you. And if you are struggling in your business, if you're struggling in life, if you think you're too old, these stories are for you. 2 of them are for you. If you think you're too old to start something, you are just not. You're not. If you're listening to this, you're old enough or you're young enough to start something new. I guarantee it. Okay, so I have 3 stories, and I'm going to try and let you guess who these are about. There's going to come a part of the story where you're going to get it, and I'm going to try not to slip and say their names. So this first guy, he was born in 1890 in Indiana. His father died when he was young. His mother worked, so he had to kind of cook and take care of his siblings. He grew a love of cooking at that point. He dropped out of school in 7th grade. He said he couldn't do algebra, so he dropped out of school in 7th grade. He lied about his age to get into the Army at age 16. And then after the Army, he got fired from a bunch of different jobs. He kind of started some companies, sold them, failed here and there. Partners blew up, like just a string of, I wouldn't say failures, but like false starts. He actually ended up studying law by correspondence, which is something you could do back then. And he practiced law for a little while and literally ended his legal career when he got into a fist fight, a physical altercation with his own client in a courtroom. So I think he was about 40 or 35 or 40 when that happened. By the time he was 40, he was running a gas station in Kentucky, and he was cooking chicken and like trying to perfect a chicken recipe at home and then selling it to travelers at the gas station. This is the craziest story. So he literally has a feud with another competing gas station over a sign, and they get in a shootout. The competitor shoots at this man, hits another man that was with him, kills him. This man shoots back, fires back, wounds the guy. The competitor goes to prison for murdering the first guy. And this guy that the story is about just goes back to his life and making chicken. His son dies, sadly, tragically. His first wife, leaves him. So during the 1930s and 1940s, so like he's 40, 50, he's obsessed with perfecting this chicken recipe and this process of pressure frying chicken. He opens a restaurant, and I think when he was 65, so he has this restaurant serving this chicken. When he's 65 years old, an interstate is built and bypasses his town, and the restaurant fails, and he sells it for nothing. He can't keep it open. He's then on Social Security for, at that time, was like $100 a month. Yeah, $100 a month. I was going to say week, and then I was like, no, it was a month in Social Security. Still determined to sell this chicken recipe. So he gets in his car and travels the country selling the licensing rights to his famous, what's become relatively well-known chicken. And he goes to well-established restaurants and sells the licensing rights to his chicken recipe. And then they're allowed to advertise Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that's who we're talking about. So he gets 600 restaurants to license his chicken. At age 65, after this slew of failures ahead of or behind him, finally at 65 years old, he gets a 600 restaurants to start licensing Kentucky Fried Chicken and using his recipe and his cooking method. And at 73 years old, sells the franchise to a corporation for $2 million, which today would be like $20 million. And that becomes Kentucky Fried Chicken. So that becomes the restaurant chain, Kentucky Fried Chicken. He then proceeds to like get in legal battles with them because he thought they ruined his recipes, and like he was a feisty man from everything I read, but he was really fun to read about. So he fails until age 65, has success from 65 to 73, sells his company at 73. He dies at 90 years old, still fighting with the corporation that bought Kentucky Fried Chicken, but he dies a very, very wealthy man. If he had given up any of these at any time and just said, yeah, I'm just going to be an average guy. I mean, at one point he tried to start a lamp company right before electricity was invented, so that fails. He goes through just a lot of failures, a lot of rejections, and at 65 makes it. So like, who are we? I'm 36. Who am I to think that I'm even close to like my last failure? I'm going to fail a lot more times. So are you. But you're going to succeed too. Okay. So this one might be a little easier to guess from the beginning. So this guy was, I have so many notes on this one. So born in 1901, had kind of a harsh childhood, delivered papers. He was from Kansas City. He ends up working for a newspaper and he gets fired by the editor. He was doing like drawings and some writing, and the editor said he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. He gets fired. That's how the story goes. There's a lot of lore around this one. So if you've heard a different version of the story, good luck finding the truth online. There's a lot of lore, but I'm just telling what I saw. So he goes and eventually starts a studio in Kansas City in the 1920s. He goes through a bankruptcy. At some point, during that time, he lived in his office and bathed in a train station. So that company goes bankrupt. He moves to Hollywood when he's 21 with a cardboard suitcase and about $40 to his name. So he wants to build cartoons. He wants to build a studio and that's what he's into. So he draws this character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and he's working for Universal at the time, and he finds out the hard way that Universal owns all the IP to Oswald. So this rabbit I've never seen, but this is the 1920s. This rabbit becomes relatively famous and he loses everything. He loses the character, the animators who helped him create it, everything's gone. Then he creates a new character. I'm going to try and not say who the character is in case you haven't gotten who this is yet. He comes out with 2 cartoons about this new character. They both flop. No one will take them. No distribution will take them. And then he adds sound to the third one, and then they get picked up and it's a hit. So that character, I'm not going to tell you yet. I'm going to try and keep going. I'm going to have to tell you in a minute. So he's got some success at this point. In 1931, he's successful in the eyes of everybody that, by those standards of that day, he is successful. In 1931, he has a complete nervous breakdown because he's overworked, and he has to take like a sabbatical to heal. Okay, so it's Mickey Mouse, and I'm talking about Walt Disney, if you hadn't got it yet. So after Mickey Mouse, he bets his entire life and the entire studio on Snow White. He mortgages his house. He leverages everything he can. The studio has no more money. Hollywood called it Disney's folly. They thought it was going to fail. They thought this guy was crazy. It was going to fail. On the brink of financial disaster, Snow White is released and becomes the biggest movie of that time. So then, after World War II, he's got a lot of financial problems. Obviously, like international markets were struggling at that time. They release Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi, and they all lost money. Then he gets his animators go on strike, and it's like this super bitter personal battle. And then in the 1940s, the studio was millions of dollars in debt again. So we have like, I mean, this is Walt Disney. We think of like this super successful company. Yeah, they had these successes, but they also like almost failed over and over multiple times after the successes. So then Disneyland, everyone tells him this is a stupid idea. You can't do this. No, his brother didn't believe him. Nobody believed in him. He borrowed against his own life insurance to fund the development of Disneyland, the early development. The lore goes that he was rejected by 302 banks. I couldn't verify that, but the story goes that he was rejected by a lot of banks. I don't know if 302 is the right number or not. But he's rejected by every bank that he goes to, basically. And he somehow gets it done, like borrowing money, mortgaging all his own stuff. The studio is in debt to get Disneyland built, this guy's dream. So this is the craziest part. I did not know this. So the first day Disneyland opened, the media refers to it as Black Sunday. Here's what happened. It was 100 degrees outside. If you've ever been to Anaheim, you know that can happen. It's 100 degrees outside. There were a bunch of counterfeit tickets that were created and sold. And so, like, totally way too many people in the park, counterfeit tickets everywhere. They had just finished asphalt in multiple places in the park, and like we're in a rush to open the park. And so the asphalt was too soft and wet still. And like women's heels and shoes were getting stuck in the asphalt. There was a plumber's strike. So he was low on plumbers, and literally during that day had to choose between getting the toilets back up and running and getting the drinking fountains working. And he chose the toilets, as the story goes. Rides broke down. There was a gas leak. It was a disaster. The opening day of Disneyland was a disaster. And everybody thought, see, we were right. This is never going to work. And you know what ends up happening, right? You've probably been to Disneyland. So that was 1955. In 1964, he has, from everything I've read about him, that was the best year of his life. Here's what happens. He releases Mary Poppins. In 1964, he was 63 years old. Yeah, 63 years old. They released Mary Poppins. It is widely regarded at the time as one of the best movies ever made, and is nominated for 13 Academy Awards and wins 5 of them, including Best Actress for Julie Andrews. The New York World's Fair, he puts up, so this is 10 years after Disneyland's opened. Disneyland has now proven to be a success. He puts 4 attractions at the New York World's Fair, and they're a huge success. So he kind of was trying to prove that Disneyland could exist outside of California because he wanted to build one in Florida. And he was trying to convince everybody else he could build another one in Florida. So that goes just crazy bonkers well. In fact, Small World was at the World's Fair, and they transferred Small World back to Disneyland. So that's where Small World actually came from. And he gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Freedom or Honor? Which one is it? I wrote Freedom, but that doesn't sound right. You can call me on that. He gets a Presidential Medal of something from Lyndon B. Johnson. 1964, he's 64 years old, 63 years old, has the best year of his life. He dies in 1966, 2 years or couple years after, or a couple years before Disney World opens. Doesn't see Disney World open, unfortunately. So he has this line at the 10-year anniversary of Disneyland. He has this line where he says, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. I just think that's so cool because our work is never completed. If you run a business, own a business, you know, like it's never over. It's never done. You've never reached the end. I just thought that was beautiful. So at 62 years old, he has his best year of his life. 63, I don't know, somewhere around there. Again, success comes in the 60s. Not saying we all have to wait that long, but I do think it's worth waiting for. Okay, this one I think you're going to guess really fast, but I'm going to try. So this woman, this story starts in the 1990s. She has a book she wants to write. She has an idea, and she's in an abusive relationship. I believe she lived in Portugal at the time, and marries a man who is pretty abusive. They have a daughter together after a miscarriage. Just kind of some sad things keep happening in this woman's life. She finally leaves the man who's abusing her as she's also trying to write this book. So she packs up and leaves with her daughter and a suitcase and 3 chapters, so the story goes, of a manuscript of her book. She goes to Scotland to live with her sister and continues writing there, taking care of her kid. She has no job. She's on government benefits. She's broke, not a lot going for her at the time. And she keeps writing this manuscript. So the husband actually comes and finds her in Scotland. She has to have a protective order, like lots of really just dark things happening to this woman. And she continues to write her book while trying to take care of her daughter on, no income, basically. She finishes the manuscript in 1995. She gets rejected by 12 publishers. She finally gets a foot in at Bloomsbury, because the story goes the chairman gave the first chapter to his 8-year-old daughter, and the daughter said, I have to read the rest of this. And so he gave her a chance. He gave her a £2,500 advance, and her editor told her to get a day job because you're never going to make any money writing children's books. So that children's book was Harry Potter. She is J.K. Rowling. She went through poverty, abuse, miscarriage, rejection, and then to have the success that she did is just such a beautiful story. I'd say it's the American dream, but she was not American. So it's just a beautiful story. She became the first billionaire, they say. So there was actually some controversy. Technically, she was the first billionaire ever from writing books. She claimed she wasn't a billionaire. She had given away a bunch of money and taxes, and Forbes had to take back that she was a billionaire. That part was strange. I don't really understand what went on there. But this is the funny part. So after all of the success of Harry Potter, billions of dollars generated from this woman's writing between the books and the movies and everything else, Disneyland, not Disneyland, it's Disneyland. Universal Studios, one of the two, I don't know. There's Harry Potter parks, right? This is the funny part. In 2013, she wrote a new novel under a pen name, Robert Galbraith, the Cormoran Strike series. It's a mystery novel. It's really good, and it's a series. I think I'm on the 3rd or 4th one. You should read them if you like to read mystery novels. Anyway, she writes under a pen name because she doesn't want to be the woman who wrote Harry Potter, because this is a very different story. It's told from a adult perspective. It's about murder. It's very dark at times. It's just totally different. She gets rejected multiple times under her new pen name. And then when one of the publishers rejected her, they say in the letter she should really invest in some writing courses or maybe a writing group because her writing was weak. And so eventually it gets published. Those books have done very well, not obviously nearly what Harry Potter is, but I just thought that rejection, that comment from a publisher was just beautiful. I bet she read it and just laughed. Like, how could you not just laugh at that, right? I love her story. I think that coming from where she came and changing the world the way she did and bringing such a beautiful story to the world too. Like, it's just such a good story and it's made so many people's lives better. And had she given up while she was abused and down on her luck, if she had just not written her book, we would live in a different world. I mean, Harry Potter changed the world in a lot of ways. So I love that one. So those are my 3 stories. And those are 3 that I like to remind myself of. The first 2 especially, Colonel Sanders and Walt Disney, the amount of rejection and failure that they faced along the way, and then to not find success until their 60s. Like, obviously, I would like to find success before I turn 65, clearly. And I have. What am I saying? Like, I love my job and this is great, but we never feel like we've hit the pinnacle, right? And so I think reading stuff like this really helps me realize, like, A, how blessed I am that things are going as well as they are. If you ever want to read a good story about this topic, you need to read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. Think what you want about Nike and what they've become. It doesn't matter. The way that they started was so inspirational. And that book changed my life. Like, it gave me the guts to keep going. The amount of risk that man took to get things started. And that's where I come back to how I was feeling yesterday, feeling a little overwhelmed by risk. What business have you ever heard of that they said, no risks were taken? No one took one risk and the business was a huge success. It just doesn't happen. So if you're going through anything that feels a little riskier than you feel comfortable with, just know that this is part of it. There's no other way. The only way out is through. And if you keep going, you can have some pretty beautiful success stories at the end. And they're going to feel even sweeter when you do succeed because of the pain and the discomfort that you went to get there. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate you being here. This is Most Days. I'll be back next week.